But in the meantime, let's introduce our reason of why we thought that this was necessary and appropriate.
So we are just coming together to bring all of our viewpoints, our experiences, to give Black women the alternative thinking and just giving them information that we need to survive and thrive.
There are so many things that are avoidable, and through the work that we all do, we come in contact with these ladies, and we've just decided, you know what, enough is enough. We have to share these experiences that we have. We have to share this knowledge that we have. We have to go out there and help and save our sisters.
Welcome to another episode of Lead, Teach, and Style, and we are your sisters, and I am Nora Muhammad.
I am Dr. Nicole Muhammad.
Shabri Muhammad.
And we are so grateful that you have come back to our episode 1 after hopefully you've listened to the introductory episode so you can learn about us and learn about our motivations for this podcast, for this show. And this week we're going to talk about what?
Design your life.
Design your life. Mm-hmm. What do you mean by that?
Well, design is when you put something together, you plan it out, a lot of thought goes into it, a lot of opinions, but it is ultimately your creation. And, we have to, I wish when I was a younger woman that I was taught that my life could be my own design, that, whatever I thought whatever I wanted, I could put together before having, a life and a future and a family. I know I'm a wife and a mother. However, those were active decisions that I made.
Right.
And I think so many of our sisters may not know that. So that's what it means to me.
And I love the analogy, too, because it can go in so many different ways, in terms of designing, fashion designing, life designing. You have something in mind that you want to create. And we can do that with our lives. What we want with our lives, we can envision it. And then we can have the forethought, have the planning, the research. Life isn't something that just has to happen to us.
Right.
We are in charge of our lives. So, taking the time to think, what do we want? Who do we want in our lives? What do I want to achieve? My family. Do I want a family? Hopefully you do. How many children do I want to have? And how I should do things. What's the order? We get ourselves off when we're doing things that don't necessarily go in order. Mathematics is something that is basic. It's a science. And if you do something the wrong way, or you put something in the equation, you have to go back and figure out what you've done wrong. But if you know how the equation goes, you can put it in and you can do step 1 and then step 2 and get to the result that you want much sooner.
Right.
Yeah, I think that, Sheree, I think this is important that we talk about this. We don't think, I think, in our community, women don't think that it's necessary to plan our lives, to know that we have the authority to plan. And Nicole, you talked about planning, how many children we want to have, what we want our lives to be, but even planning who we want to be ourselves.
Right.
I remember growing up and being 12 years old and thinking about, what am I going to be like when I'm 21? Like, what is the 21-year-old me going to be like? Where is she going to live? What is she going to drive? Who are her friends going to be? What's her apartment going to look like? I remember thinking about that. I didn't necessarily plan it. I didn't, strategically sit down and plan those things. But I remember thinking about what am I going to be? What is my life going to be in the future? And when we don't recognize the importance of planning, we don't map out, or we don't exercise the authority that we have over our lives to design, as you say, to plan, to be strategic, to know. I mean, if you have a plan, for example, if you want to get your nursing degree, right, then there's a plan for that, right? So there's prerequisites. Well, first you have to, do an application. There's a process. There's an application process. There's a a payment, a financial piece. There's the academic piece in terms of understanding what the requirements are. And then, going through the course. And then once, you complete your academic requirements, then there's a nursing exam, a board, right? A state board that you can take to be licensed to practice as a nurse. So with anything, there involves strategic planning if we want the best outcome. So I think that this is, a great conversation to have.
Yes. And you know what? We should also keep in mind that we might not know everything, especially when you're a young woman. You may not know everything that you want in your future. However, it's also important to plan what you don't want. You may have some ideas about what you don't want. You can start making standards now so that things don't just happen. Like Dr. Nicole mentioned, things could haphazardly happen out of order if we don't have a plan. And I'm not talking about sitting down, writing things down, although, you can do that as well. But think about things that you don't want for your life. And how are those things going to happen? I talk to many young people regularly, and they just don't understand how their friends get into certain situations because these are good people. These are people who they never thought these things would happen. But I come to the realization that they didn't plan for those things not to happen. Okay? So just start with some standards, what you want and what you don't want. At least just have an idea about it.
Right. And I think it's great to give both sides to what you want and what you don't want, because you can plan and make preparations for both. You can create your behaviors to fall in line with getting what you want, and you can have your behaviors to fall in line with what you don't want. Just for an example, just a young woman that I know, and probably a lot of women that we know who, for example, get into patterns of having children out of wedlock. And, some of the women that I find just kind of don't have any, there are things that they can do to prevent this from happening. And they don't exercise those things. Or they get into patterns of being with men who are not good fathers. So they've had that experience of having a child. We all have our experiences. We'll have done things that we, would have gone back and done differently. But we find women falling into the same repetitive patterns. And if the man was not a good father to the child the first time, we find them, why did you fall back into having the second and the third child with the same man who, and now we want to vilify him as if he is not who he showed himself to be. So
right. Yeah, even a woman has a child with a man who has children already that he isn't caretaking,
right.
And then we have children with him. So just in general, we're talking about us planning out our lives, but you brought in the piece about motherhood and parenting. And we, as parents, we also are planning out the future for our children. What outcomes do we want for our children? So for me, specifically, when I had children, I decided that I wanted my children to have good character.
Right.
I wanted them to be decent people, kind to others. I wanted them to love themselves. I wanted them to have strong and healthy self-esteem. And, that was just part of, my design for my children. And I had my children around people who supported my outcomes for them. I had children in a marriage so that I could make sure my children had the stability that they were entitled to. And so, we can't just have children haphazardly. I mean, it happens, and
right.
And it may happen by mistake, but we don't want to have redundant errors or redundant accidents.
So I'm the first one to say I didn't plan. I know better now. I did not plan everything out. I know I wanted children. I know I wanted a husband. And when you want the best for them, you have to start thinking, okay, how do I get what it is that I want? So I know I had to be married. I know I had to be married because I just thought of it as stability. I thought of it as a 2 household income. That was something that one of my professors talked to me a lot about. She said, no matter what happens, someone else can pick up, if something were to happen. And, that it wasn't always about this, this love and this burning affection that you have for someone. However, it's for civilization, and it's for just correcting things that are out of place. So I know I wanted to be married before I had children. I always wanted to be able to tell my children, you want a husband. How can you tell them that if you don't have one? Of course, we can always teach our children we want what's better. We want something better for them than what we had. But I knew the type of lifestyle that I wanted. I needed a husband. Things change as you get older and you have different experiences. I wanted that husband at first with no children, okay? And, as I got older, I started to see the beauty of children. So I said, you know what, this wouldn't be a family if we didn't have children. What are we doing here? What are we supposed to be doing if we're not raising children? If my husband and I aren't coming together to do something together, and raising children is like the best partnership you can have. And I said, okay, well, maybe just one, And I realized that one was alone, and that my son would gain leadership qualities if he had a sibling in the home with him. And so one becomes two, and we're talking about every aspect of your life. If you can just think about those things that you want, plan on how to get them. Because as the show will go on, we'll talk about a lot that comes out of just the foundation of having a mate, a partner in life, someone consistent, someone who you can depend on when you're not at your best.
Right.
And that is being married. I come in contact with a lot of ladies who aren't considering marriage. It's not something that they want to do. But I think that's only because they have an idea of marriage that they're not interested in. And you can design your own marriage.
Right.
What's good for you and your partner may not be what's good for someone else and their partner. And that's why that's a private commitment. That's why you get to know a person. You get to know their family. They get to know your family, and see if we can, we can make this happen.
Right.
And it gives us a foundation. It gives the children a foundation, and it roots you, because if we're out in the world, we all need something that tethers us, that we are coming together with another human being to create better lives, and hopefully you're enriching each other's lives. And with the children, I think they're just things that happen. And people say that it's easy to raise children, or it's just not even something they thought about. It just happened. And, it was so crucial to me, and I agree what you said, Sister Nora. It was so important for me to instill character and confidence and self-love within my children and my daughter, because when you are focused on being a whole person, when you're confident in who you are, when you're not a jealous person, an envious person, you are not only not harming yourself and not harming others, but you are a benefit to other people.
Right.
And you have something to offer of greatness within yourself, and you're not bringing someone else down, so that whether it's a friendship, whether it's a mate, you have something, you are more whole, and you're not detracting from what could be progress.
Yeah, you're an asset. You're not a liability.
Right.
And you both make such great points. I think that we don't often think about what we want. And sometimes sit down. Have a quiet moment. I know, we are so driven to know what's going on with the Joneses on our socials, Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat. But sometimes take time and sit down, listen to some soft music, and sit down and think about what you want your life to look like 3 months, 6 months, a year from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 20 years from now. Have an idea and if you haven't thought about it, write some things down, cross some things off, add some things in the margins, Think about what you want your life to include, the kinds of people that you want in your life. And also consider what you don't want. And for me, as I was growing up, I knew that there were some things I did not want in my life. And I took measures to prevent these things from happening in my life because I saw other people in their lives and mistakes and accidents and poor decision making. And I saw the impacts of those poor decisions, and I decided, and I had to deal with the consequences of others' poor decision making, right?
Right.
So I decided that, those outcomes weren't ones that I wanted to create for myself or my children if I were to have them in the future. And so think about what we don't want, and steps that we have the capacity to take to avoid them. So much we, as Black women, and this may be an unpopular kind of conversation that I'm going in, we are lauded or celebrated as victims, right? My father left me. My father left my mom when I was a child, so we had to grow up this way. My daughter's father, he left, or my son's father left, and so I'm left and I'm the single mom, and society is kind of putting me up on a pedestal, but even really not helping me, thrive.
Right.
But, because Black women are being applauded for being so strong. Like, who wants to have to be strong all the time, Like you said, you want somebody to help you when you're not strong, right? And help us when we're vulnerable, because we're going to have those vulnerable moments. So we are kind of in this position often as the victim of some circumstance, of someone leaving us, of someone mistreating us. But the people that we allow, and I say allow, into our lives, they can enhance, right? Or they can tear down.
Right.
But these people are people that we're choosing. So because we have the freedom of choice, we have to exercise that power, and it is a power, and we have to exercise that freedom because we are free. Like, nobody in America is arranging marriages, right? So if you have a bad relationship, you chose to enter into it, right? Because these laws are different here. So I think that we have to exercise in our own personal accountability, and don't kind of find ourselves complacent in that area of allowing people to, cheer us on as, these single moms who are struggling by themselves. Well, why? What choice did we make that created the struggle?
And Sister Nora, Dr. Nicole, have you ever met people who say, you can't help who you fall in love with?
I've met people who say that, and
Yes.
I think it's foolish. It's
I
foolish.
can't help who I fall in love with.
Sure you can.
It just happens.
Sure you can.
You make decisions. You decide if something is a go or if something is a no. I was told that when I was younger, oh, well, you can't help it, you can't hold it, by older women who thought they were schooling me on something. And I thought to myself, well, while I'm young and I'm not in love, let me decide now. Before it happens, let me decide now. This type of person I don't go for, or this type of person is okay. I don't know who I'm going to meet. We're talking about planning life. You don't know who's going to enter into your life, but you do have the control to tell them yay or nay, right? And we were talking about children. There's no handbook for marriage. There's no handbook for raising children. However, we're surrounded by people with different experiences. And if you have grandparents or friends of the family who have been married for 80 years, you can ask them, what are some of the things you've been through? What helped to keep your marriage together? What should I do in the difficult times? And we'll find, because I'm sure you have met people like that, most intelligent people, they ask those people for information. There's a common fabric, that keeps people together because no one has the answers. But those people who have been through it, they'll tell you what they did in those those trying times. Whether they have a religion that kept them strong, whether they had the love of their children to keep them together, or just knowing that civilization is best when people are courted and married and have a plan. So, we don't have all of the answers. However, we're surrounded, and you're surrounded by people who have experiences that you will experience, or maybe you can make a decision based off of their experience. I know where I grew up, there was a lot of teenage pregnancy. Some of the girls had they had support systems and some didn't. But I knew, and you know what, they would go around and they would say, my mom's going to put me out. If I get pregnant, my mom's going to kick me out. I never felt that my mom would kick me out, but I didn't want to have to make that decision or have to find out.
Right.
So that was just one of the things that I knew, regardless of who I met, Mr. Right or whatever, that's one of the things I did not want to happen, because I just didn't want to, I was afraid to make those kind of decisions,
And then what is love? People saying you can't help who you fall in love with. Yes, I can, okay? Because I'm not even going to put myself in a position to even get to that point based on what I can see. There are certain things that are obvious.
Indicators.
And I've joked with you, Sister Nora, I don't think I ever told you about a very close friend I had who was putting herself in a position where she could become pregnant with this guy who had no job, who was unemployed and had been unemployed for I don't know how long, but I don't know if she considered herself in love with him, or I know she was attracted to him, but there's a difference between love and lust.
Right.
And let's not confuse the two.
Right.
Because if you're someone who doesn't have some basic things in place in your life, especially at a certain time, if you're in your 30s and 40s and you have no steady source of income, why would you put yourself in a position to have a child with this person?
Right.
Because when you're engaging in certain behaviors, there's a chance that you're going to have a baby.
Big chance.
And so and then we get pregnant, right? And then the women vilify the man as if he's become some monster that just overnight, now he's a horrible person. No, he's the same person.
The same irresponsible
that you
person.
chose to have into your most intimate space. And, that's another side of it that, I just want women to think about, that the man is not different. He's who he was when you met him.
Right.
And, even, family members, you've made a decision to engage in this behavior with this man, and he's not responsible for any of the children. And why are we upset with him? Why are we putting him out there like he's some horrible person? He's not any different than who he was when you first met him. And part of that, I think, is also thinking about, as women, just thinking about having a sense of value of ourselves. So, I mean, we may not even be where we want to be in life as a person, in any capacity, but at each point in our lives, we should know that we should take the person and see if this person is worthy of being in our space, being in our lives in any significant capacity.
Right. Yeah, I think that part there that you mentioned about values is so important in our value of ourselves. And, there are indicators, when a man is serious about a woman. There are indicators,
yes.
Right? And, Motel 6 is not an indicator, but the justice of the peace is an indicator.
Right.
Honoring you in front of your family, and making a public commitment to secure you, to build with you, to be your partner, to be that person that you can go to and depend on, and that will be the father for your children. That's an indicator that a man is serious. And we have to distinguish between love and lust. I remember being young and, going to a party, when I was in high school, going to a house party, going to the skating rink, and like, you fell in love every time you You got the right song, you got the right dance, you're in the right mood, you done fell in love again. Every Friday night you're falling in love, but it was all,
cute.
It was, but it was all based off of attraction. You don't know a person, in a 3 dances. You don't get to know them. You don't know their values. You don't know what they think about themselves, let alone what they think about you. How does he treat his mama? How does he relate with his sisters? Does he look out for them? Does he protect them? Is he serious about his own life? And I remember counseling my a relative years ago, and she was interested in a boy, and her mother did not like him, and she wanted to pursue this relationship. And she had all of her arguments ready for me of why, this boy was the boy. And I said, well, before we get to talking about him being good for you, is he good to himself, right? Is he working to support himself? Is he in school to educate himself? Is he taking skills courses to advance himself? What is he doing for himself before you make a decision to open your life up to him? And so there are indicators that I don't think that we are passing on to our younger women to be considerate of. There was a time where we had older women who gave counsel to younger women, right? They were the grandmothers, they were the aunts, they were the elder women in the community. And so there has been a gap generation that came, and, many in my generation, we are the unfortunate victims of that gap. And so there's so many women my age and younger who are making choices because they don't have information. They didn't have someone counseling them and schooling them. They didn't have a father saying, looking over your shoulder at this guy, or the brother being responsible enough to say, well, let me meet him. Right. And this decision making and life design is not just about relationships, but because relationships produce children, and we're concerned about our community and our community's children. That's why, I think we are talking about this. But life design, really talks about relationships and so much else. But because relationships, have the outcome of producing children and destroying lives. I was just speaking with my cousin who told me about a young woman who it was in the news recently. You may have seen it. The young woman was found in a car, in the trunk of a car that, she had been burned. The car had been burned. And she had been killed by her boyfriend, and they had children together. They had been together, but there were indicators that the man wasn't well, that she ignored. And, I guess she thought that she would change or he would change. And he didn't change. And ultimately, she's lost her life. And now her children don't have a mother. And, of course, they're not going to have a father because he's going to be, hopefully convicted of the crime. And now the family is grieving. So we want to save our women the suffering and the children that come out of the relationships.
And I know some of our listeners, they may have already gotten past the stage of choosing before they have children because they're just listening to this program, or this is something that no one has ever sat down and talked to them about. However, it's not too late for your children. Make sure you're teaching your daughters. If that's something that you didn't do, see the beauty in finding a good mate, finding someone that won't be in and out of your children's lives. That typically doesn't happen when you're married first. Okay?
What do you mean? What typically doesn't happen when you're married first?
Having a mate that is in and out of the child's life.
So if you're married first, you're saying then the mate is more stable. That person's stable.
The relationship is more stable for that person to stick around. And the reason I brought that up is because I talk to a lot of sisters out there who say, well, marriage doesn't secure that. Marriage doesn't mean that either. Well, when ask men, we talked about these experiences and these people who we have around us. Ask them. That is usually when they're serious. They don't usually go that far just to play games. Okay? And I also find that the greatest indicator of men's actions is when you have a brother and your brother doesn't have anything to hide. Your dad might because he's married to your mom or he's with your mom. Your boyfriend at the time might. Because, of course, he may keep the truth from you. But when you have a brother who you can watch how he deals with women who call the house, who come by, or usually they just want to give their sister the game so that doesn't happen to her, because typically brothers love their sisters, right? They want to keep them away from, quote unquote, dudes like them, right?
Right.
That is a good place to start. What does my brother do? How does my brother feel about this one versus how he feels about that one? What do he and his friends say? What are their experiences? What can I get from him to know the other side? We can't assume we know what men are thinking. We can't assume that we know that because they went through all of this drama, they must be serious. Nope. If they haven't committed to you, if they have not even talked about marriage with you, there is no need to give a man who doesn't want to be committed to you a child.
Or access to you.
Access.
A couple of things that come to mind. One, I think it's so important that we take advantage of those who we trust in our lives, the men that we trust, the brothers, the uncles, fathers, grandfathers, because, you know, a man can see another man.
Right.
And we don't want to be so foolish. Sometimes we get caught in our emotions and we just know. We know what is and what isn't. How about another man who knows men take a look? Just get some feedback from someone that you trust in your life to get to have a conversation with the brother at least, so you can get some feedback, and you know, maybe the person is on point. Maybe you are right.
Right.
Maybe that's the confirmation from people that you trust, or if someone you do trust can tell you, I know this kind of guy. That you want to stay away from this. So I think that we have to get out of thinking that we know, because emotions can cloud our thinking and our judgment, and they do.
And lust. I keep going.
Yes.
Fall in love on a Friday night at a dance, you know.
I once heard, once there's lust, there's nothing you can do about it.
Right.
So you don't want to go that far.
And you don't you don't want to lose your power. And not in the right way.
Right.
You have the power to make a good decision or the power to make a bad decision. And sometimes women think, well, I have to sleep with him or else he'll leave.
Because everybody else is.
Or, right.
Anybody else will.
Right.
Yeah.
And
Power starts dwindling.
No, it's gone. It's gone. Once you've done that, you have no leg to stand on.
Yeah.
Because that's part of the end.
Right.
Well, you know, I'll say I think that I was just talking with a set of young women, as a matter of fact, about how we allow the boy or the young man, to dip and dodge from dad and uncle and brother. So we'll say, I don't want you to meet my dad. Meet me around the corner, right? Or I'll meet you there at the movies, or I'll meet you at the restaurant, because we don't want the scrutiny, right? Because we know that the scrutiny might tell us something
that we might have an idea about.
That we might have an idea about. And so, one, I don't think that we value men enough to appreciate the feedback and input. I mean, while you were talking, Dr. Nicole, I'm thinking about not allowing a man to look over a man that we're interested in having a physical relationship with, because if we're in a relationship with a man, most of the time he is physically superior to us, right? And in general, that's many times our preference, right? Right. I don't, when wants a man that looks like she can overpower him. Right. So generally, the man would have the capacity to overpower the woman. We are going to trust that man alone with us before he's been vetted by other men. And so I think about us, looking at a car that we want. We don't ask our nurse friend to look at the car. We ask our mechanic friend to look at the car. Tell me what it is about this car that I might not know, right? Look at the, the spark plugs. Look at the engine. I don't even know what I'm supposed to be saying because I don't know cars. Right. So I have a mechanic that I take the car to, or a trusted person that, is my consultant in this arena. And so the same thing with men, have someone that you trust. and that has good judgment and that loves you and is interested in protecting you, to overlook this person that we are literally, and I'm not trying to be an alarmist, but we are literally putting our life in their hands.
That's right.
Because as the tragic story I just shared, she put her life in the hands of this man that took her life. But there were indicators all the while that this person had some challenges. And you talked about value. When we value ourselves, then we should value the preservation of life.
Right.
Foremost. Before anything else, I need to be able to live, right? That way, at least if I make a bad decision, I can live and correct it.
Right.
But we have to value ourselves and value our lives and value men who can give us insights on men stuff that we don't know. If your brother brought a woman, you could look at her and see right through her. Boy, that girl don't love you. The same thing with men, and we have to, allow those important men in our lives that opportunity.
Yes. Okay, let me share 2 experiences I have a very young teenage daughter. And 2 things that I'm pushing her in the direction of. One is just don't like anybody first. Because that is an indicator to a man. Don't like anyone first. You attract who you'll attract. And you'll decide yes, no. And when I say yes, I mean that person is a potential mate for life. That person is going places. Now, when I say a young teenage daughter, I'm getting her prepared for later. I don't expect her to bring anyone to me now. I'm just trying to lay these seeds now so that when she is a young woman, she'll know, just build yourself up. And as you're building yourself up, you'll attract certain types of people. And as they come and, bid their bid or whatever, you'll decide if they're serious, if they're worthy of your attention, of your time, of your parents' attention. You'll decide based off of, who God brings into your life. My other thing is this just happened yesterday, but I pointed out a gentleman. And I told her, if you even think about bringing somebody who looks like that, he could be a wonderful guy, but his whole persona shows me what's in his head. And you better not ever bring anybody like that to our house, because we'll know that you didn't consider anything that we taught you, because he obviously doesn't take care of himself. He doesn't care how he looks. He wants to look like a person who we know most people don't want to look like. I'm not going to put people on blast on here, but there are certain things you look at that tell you, okay, that a person is, that they don't want, they're not in a point in their life where they're seeking to be more than what they are now. He looked like that. Don't even waste my time with that. Don't waste your own time with that. So these are things that even as a young girl, I want to start laying seeds in her that certain things, reject what's not good for you.
Right. And know to know what is good, and to know what isn't good. Right. And that's why it's so important that we have families. We have children in families, so that the father is there, so that he can teach his girl children, what is desirable in a man and what isn't. Now, you can get into whether you like them tall or short or, slim or thick, but just in terms of the character traits that are important in men. And the same thing that we as mothers have to give to our sons, good character traits. You're talking about raising your daughter. I have sons, and I would tell my sons, you want her to be nice when you meet her. You want her to be a nice girl, kind to others, and happy, meaning she smiles. Because, if you choose to go further and marry this young woman, if she's only happy because you came around, at some point in any relationship, there's going to be disappointment, right? And if this woman is nice and kind and happy, then when you disappoint her, she's not going to become suddenly this monster that she's always been, but she's just being nice because you're rocking her world.
Right.
You know?
Happiness is contingent.
Yeah, it's contingencies on happiness. Where she say, I don't care about you. I'll be here when you get yourself together, but I'm still going to be the nice, decent, kind, happy person that I was.
Right.
And you decide you want to be happy again, I'll be happy here with you. Right. But it's important that we kind of, like you said, lay these seeds for our children. And so many in our community didn't have these seeds laid for them. So it is our intention to help lay these seeds for those who are listening, or those who are listening and can share this episode with other young women that might not have someone to kind of have these sorts of conversations, and, think about what you want your future to look like. And then think about how you can have what strategies you need to employ to get those people there, or to get those circumstances. If you want to have a degree when you're 25, right, then talk to somebody who has a degree, right? If you want to be self-employed or be an entrepreneur, well, you can't talk to the person at the job. You need to talk to someone else who's self-employed, right? Someone who's credible on that issue. Sometimes we go to people, if I'm making $10 an hour and I want to make $20 an hour, I can't talk to the person that's making $10 an hour how I can make $20 an hour. I need to talk to somebody who's making $20 an hour, the person who's credible. And so as we are thinking about, or as you're thinking about what you want your life outcomes to be, as you are now considering the fact that you can design your life, seek out those people who are where you want to be as you are strategically planning your future.
Right.
And, some of the things you both mentioned, ties in, and the conversation that you have with your children, just that it is planning, that just the magnitude of being a mother or a father, that you have the opportunity to instill in your children what they need to give them the firm foundation, the firmest foundation.
Right.
That we know that any person can go off, and, there's sometimes that one person in the family, no matter what, they may go off and do whatever. But when you are conscious and with forethought in what you want to put into your children, then you're giving them the best send-off that you can possibly give them, so that they can be the best members of their families and society.
That's right.
Well said. Well said.
Yes.
Design your life.
Design it.
And you have, and here's the thing, you have the authority to do, I'll say this, that when I was younger, when I was soon to be graduating high school, I really didn't know what I wanted to do. I figured I was going to college because that was the expectation.
Right.
But I really didn't, I really wasn't active or, or assertive in getting myself into college. And I was so blessed that my grandmother was planning when I wasn't. She was designing when I wasn't, because I just didn't have that capacity. I didn't have that know-how. I didn't have that ambition or that drive at that time. So I had somebody in my life who could design something for me when it just didn't occur to me,
Right.
And this is something else when I'm speaking with young people and youth groups and youth leaders, is I tell them that sometimes you don't know what you want your next step to be. But if you have somebody in your life that you trust, that has your best interest, whether it's a grandparent, an uncle, a parent, a teacher, a counselor, a mentor, your minister, if you have someone that can help you plan in the absence of, kind of having a drive, or in the absence of kind of not knowing, exactly what you do, let them put you someplace that is good for you, and you can grow where you are. My grandmother really laid a strong foundation for me, and, she was strategic when I just didn't know how to be. But when I got it, and I was able to thank her for what she did and take off from there. And then I was able to start planning and be strategic and kind of mapping out what I wanted to do and where I wanted to be and where I wanted to go. So in the absence of that ourselves, we can consult those responsible and caring people in our lives to help support us in that way.
Yes. And I just want to add, when we talk about design your lives, that means that it insinuates that everyone's life is different. You talked about graduating high school and being prepared for college, and we know that that's not the route of everyone, right? There's a lot of sisters out there who may be married or in a committed relationship and don't go to college because maybe they're young, they're 18, 19, 20, something like that. But designing your life even means as a mother. If you're going to be a mother, if you're going to be a housewife, and you're married, but your aspirations don't take you out into the world, to spread your wings in that capacity. Design the type of mother that you want to be. Think about the type of children you want and what you can do as a mother to make sure they get it. Because there are a lot of people who I've asked over the years who I know they are like their child's biggest advocate, and their child is intelligent. They're going off to these great schools and getting scholarships and things like that. And when I think about it, I'm like, wait, but their parents didn't go to college. And I'll ask them, how did you get this know-how to push your child? And they would say, it comes from love. It comes from being a part of that parent school community. Right. You have to have a relationship with the guidance counselor, with the teachers. Just loving your child and knowing you want better for them guided them in that direction.
Right, well said.
And seeking guidance, definitely. If you don't have the information, that's something else we've been talking about, to use those trusted sources that you have. And it takes community. That we don't do any of this alone.
Right.
We have a mate, we have friends, we have a support network of trustworthy individuals. Not just anyone. We have to remind ourselves, we have to vet and make sure that we have the right people in our lives and value ourselves enough to do that. And just to make sure that we are utilizing all the resources that we have. And just in terms of the children, being as thoughtful about who they are as individuals in terms of our parenting. Because we can talk about activities, we can talk about school and what they aspire to in this world, but we have to place as much focus, if not more, on who they are as people.
Right.
Because no matter where they go or what they do, they'll be successful if they have the root in terms of being a whole, confident, caring, nice, happy person. And that will take them anywhere.
Yes.
Emphasis on nice.
And don't you think it's important for us to let go of old habits? Like, we may want to do things the way our mother did it, or that may be the only way we know how to do it. But Dr. Nicole, those attributes that you just assigned to this great child, we can't beat the child down and then expect them to come up with this great self-esteem, So it's okay if we go off the course of how we were raised or what we've been taught or what we've been thinking all of our lives and what we want for our children.
Yeah,
And just want to say something, too, about, because one of the things that we do get engrossed in is sports and activities like that. And we'll put energy and time and money into that, and you're at every practice, you're at every game, but is your child a nice, decent person?
Right.
Who cares if they go off to the NBA or the NFL and they're a jerk?
Right.
That same time and effort that we put into these things that are temporary, because nobody's an 80-year-old Heisman Trophy winner. They are a person and an individual that needs to contribute to the society in a positive way.
Yes. And, I think also, as we're strategically planning, and you talked about having trusted advisors, think about the team that you want around you, right? And I have, my team. If you're watching us on YouTube, you see my team. Right. These ladies are integral parts of my team, and there are not too many major decisions that aren't made in consultation with my team. And it takes all kinds of people, to be on the team. Everybody on your team won't think alike and won't have the same kind of style. Somebody on your team might be that one that's just abrupt and says, no, that's a bad idea. I can't believe you thought of that, right? There might be that person that's the woo-woo person. Well, it's not a good idea, but maybe, in so many different aspects of our lives, we need a support network, because one of the challenges that we face is thinking that we could just do things by ourselves all the time, right? And to have people who can support you and support your goals, because sometimes we're so afraid to say it out loud.
Right.
Partly because then we're responsible, for what we say out loud, but also because we don't want to be judged. You know, we don't, I might think too lofty. Well, if your thinking is too lofty for the people around you, then get other people around you, right? And who can support your lofty idea. That doesn't have to be your best friend. That could be the professor that's teaching the class that you're in. You could go to that professor and say, I don't have a lot of people around me who think like I do. My family isn't very progressive, but I know that you are. Can you advise me? And we have to come out of our comfort zones. That person doesn't have to be your best friend, but if they have the know-how, the skill set, the resources, or the network to connect us with what it is that we need to take ourselves to the next level, we have to be proactive and avail ourselves of that, because it's not always going to come to us easily.
Yeah. Okay, so I think this is a universal truth here. Education first.
Yes.
Whatever the education is, get a good education.
Yes.
Then marriage. Then children.
Yes.
We agree on that?
Absolutely.
It's a formula for success. And,
Yes.
know, and I'll say this, we're not just talking about an education that is going to, put letters at the end of your name, but we're talking, like, for example, we had the great fortune to meet with the superintendent and the superintendent of schools for the city in which we reside, right? And the commissioner of education. And the three of us impressed upon the commissioner of education and the superintendent the value of home economics, the value of trade, because most girls will be mothers, most boys will be fathers. And if the young lady isn't trained into the science of cooking, the science of nutrition, which can be provided at the high school level, so that once she graduates high school, she understands that science, and if she has, she becomes married and has children, then she's well equipped. So we're not just talking about, college and graduate school and, getting a PhD. We're talking about education that you can use to edify and support yourself and your family.
That's right.
And the power that we have to not let life just happen.
Right, that's right.
We kind of, or bystanders to our lives sometimes, rather than taking the responsibility. Like, it's a gift. When you were born, there's nobody else that has your DNA, unless you're identical twin, right? But even as twins, you're different. And you have the right, you have the authority to create what you want for your life, and to realize that you have the privilege and the opportunity to create greatness, and to have people around you who let you know your dreams aren't lofty enough, sometimes. That's you're thinking too small. And that even if we are on a path and we, may not be getting married any time in the foreseeable future, but that we're continuing to become our best selves, so that we are, whenever that time comes, if it comes, then we are our best selves to present to another person.
Yes.
And I think, too, getting past this whole lust thing, I can't, it's just so ridiculous, to really think about that. It's so insignificant in the scheme of life, because it can fade. Often it fades. It's not the same in the beginning as it is, 10, 20, 30 years down the line often. And think about this person that you're so lustful with, that because you're lustful, there's a good chance that you're going to end up with a child, whether you're married or not. And that child that is likely to come into the picture deserves to have a father or mother, if it's a male, because it's both ways. The men making good decisions about the women that are going to be the mothers of your children, and who are raising your sons, your daughters. You want to be thoughtful about that, and just think about the quality of the person, that lust that you feel and that attraction you have, that it's selfish to be just consumed with that, because a child can be produced from that lust. And now that child has has what quality of a person as a mother or father now.
And potential for the future, right? And so for those who, may be hearing a conversation like this for the first time about designing your life and recognizing the authority that you have, if you have not had charge of your life, control of your life, if you've given that to someone who has been irresponsible, you can take the authority back. You can take the power back, because ultimately it is yours. And there are circumstances that we may find ourselves in that are unfortunate, but we don't have to stay there, right? We can make a different decision and go in a different direction. It may not be an overnight change. It could be gradual. Then let it be gradual. Then let it be gradual. And take back control of your life, or take control of your life. To produce the best outcomes that you are entitled to. I know each of us, we love our sisters so much. We want all of us winning and thriving and successful in whatever capacity success is for you. We want y'all winning, right? And we don't want to be the only ones. And we've had measures of success in our lives, and we've had pretty decent outcomes, right? And we want that for the rest of our community, and we want our sisters to just soar, and to produce children who also soar and who are wonderful gifts to the world.
That's right, and it's never too late to start making good decisions.
Yes. Never.
Yeah, so we have said a lot in this episode. This is our episode 1. We want to thank you for joining us. You can expect so much more. Each of these ladies has so much in the tank to share with all of us, and I look forward to hearing from them, and we look forward to hearing from you. So if you have feedback on this episode, if you have a comment or question, then you can submit your question to us via email at leadteachstyle@gmail.com. We look forward to hearing from you, and we hope to see you again next time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of Lead, Teach, and Style. Be sure to follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Lead, Teach, Style. You can email your questions and comments to leadteachstyle@gmail.com and subscribe to the Lead, Teach, and Style YouTube page. You can find links to all in today's show notes. And don't forget to drop us a rating and review on iTunes.